Have you ever stopped to consider how close you are to the edge of your own moral cliff, the line that separates the well-behaved citizen from the unhinged monster lurking beneath society's surface? Picture this. You're sitting at your desk, the daily routine droning on around you, when suddenly you find yourself in a situation where the rules of decency no longer apply. Would you still be the saint you believe yourself to be? Or would you slip into that abyss, clawing and thrashing as you fell? I came across a book that grabbed my mind and shook it to its core, The Lucifer Effect by Philip Zimbardo. It doesn't just ask why good people turn evil, it throws the answer in your face. It could be you, yes, you. But before you recoil in horror, let me guide you through this dark, twisted maze of human psychology. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Let's start with a little poke at your self-image. You, dear fan of the channel, like to think of yourself as a good person. Maybe you return wallets you find on the street or volunteer at the local animal shelter on weekends. But let's be brutally honest for a moment. Have you ever taken something that wasn't yours just because you knew you wouldn't get caught? A pen from the office, a neighbor's Wi-Fi signal? There's a reason I ask. Zimbardo, in his clinical yet disturbingly relatable style, makes it clear that evil isn't some distant, abstract force. No, it's a slippery slope that starts with small, seemingly harmless transgressions. Take, for example, the case of Ivan "Chip" Frederick, a name you might not know but a story you need to hear. Frederick was an all-American boy, the kind who loved baseball and mom's apple pie. But then he found himself at Abu Ghraib, that infamous prison in Iraq, where unspeakable horrors were inflicted on prisoners. Here's the twist. Before his deployment, Frederick was as average as they come. He wasn't a monster by birth. He was a guy with a decent IQ, a stable mind, and a love for his country. But Abu Ghraib warped him into something awful. And if you think you're any different, you're in for a rude awakening. The truth is, the line between good and evil is much more porous than you'd like to believe. You might still be clinging to the comforting belief that you're inherently good, that your personality is as fixed as the stars in the night sky. But let me shatter that illusion for you. The idea that your character is unchangeable, that who you are remains consistent across all situations, is pure fiction. Zimbardo introduces the situational approach, a perspective that's both liberating and terrifying. Who you are isn't written in stone, it's written in sand, constantly shifting with the tides of your environment. Think about it. How do you act around your friends compared to how you behave in front of a child? Are you the same person in both situations? Of course not. Now let's take this a step further. Imagine you're participating in the Milgram experiment, a classic, albeit disturbing study in human behavior. You're a teacher tasked with administering increasingly painful electric shocks to a learner for every mistake they make. The shocks start off mild, but soon enough they're cranked up to a life-threatening 450 volts. The learner is screaming, begging you to stop, but you keep going. Why? Because a man in a lab coat told you to. In this experiment, a shocking 65% of participants, ordinary people like you, delivered the maximum voltage. They weren't sadists. They were just regular folks swayed by the situation and the authority looming over them. What Zimbardo is telling us, loud and clear, is that the right, or rather wrong, circumstances can turn any of us into agents of cruelty. If you're still with me, let's dig even deeper into the darkness, shall we? Zimbardo didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, or more accurately, he conducted one of the most controversial psychological experiments in history, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Picture this: 24 college students, all of them clean-cut, middle-class and psychologically stable, are dropped into a mock prison environment. Half are randomly assigned as guards, and the other half become prisoners. The guards are given uniforms, batons, and mirrored sunglasses, the kind that hide their eyes, and by extension, their humanity. The prisoners, they're stripped, deloused, and given numbers instead of names. It doesn't take long for this psychological play to spiral into a full-blown nightmare. The guards, these supposedly normal, decent guys, start to revel in their power. They force prisoners to urinate in buckets, strip them naked, and lock them in dark closets as punishment. One guard even earned the nickname John Wayne for his particularly brutal methods. And all of this happened within just 6 days. 6 days, people. That's all it took before Zimbardo pulled the plug on the experiment. The takeaway? Under the right conditions, your morals can crumble faster than a sandcastle in a hurricane. You'd like to think that in the same situation you'd act differently. But the truth is, you don't really know, do you? So, what tips the scales? Why do people like Frederick or the Stanford Guards descend into cruelty while others manage to stay grounded? Zimbardo points to one particularly dangerous ingredient in the recipe for evil: obedience to authority. Whether it's a person, an institution, or a set of rules, authority can push even the most righteous among us to commit terrible acts. Let's revisit Milgram's experiment for a moment. The participants weren't inherently evil. They were just following orders, thinking they were contributing to a greater good. This obedience to authority didn't start with Milgram's study, and it sure didn't end there. Look no further than the Jonestown massacre for proof. Jim Jones, a charismatic leader who initially stood for utopian ideals, gradually turned into a tyrant. His followers didn't see it coming. They trusted him, obeyed him, even when he handed them cups of cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. More than 900 people died that day. Not because they were evil, but because they were obedient. So here's a question for you. How often have you followed an order, not because it felt right, but because it was easier? How many times do you question the people in charge, or do you just assume they must know best, that they must be right? Maybe it's time to start asking those uncomfortable questions before you find yourself knee-deep in moral quicksand. But it doesn't end with authority, does it? Oh no, the slide into darkness has another sneaky partner: the loss of personal responsibility. Imagine this. You're in the Milgram experiment, your hand hovering over that dial, cranking up the shock as the learner in the next room screams in pain. But hey, you think, it's not really your problem, right? The guy in the lab coat said he'd take full responsibility. This concept, known as de-individuation, is a very slippery slope. It's why people in mobs wear masks, why soldiers wear uniforms, and why cyberbullies hide behind anonymous usernames. When you feel like your actions can't be traced back to you, it's frighteningly easy to let go of your sense of right and wrong. Zimbardo ran a powerful field experiment to make this clear. He left an abandoned car in the Bronx, a place where anonymity runs high. Within hours, it was stripped, vandalized, and destroyed. But in Palo Alto, a more close-knit community where people were more likely to be recognized, that same car sat untouched, as if invisible. It's a strong reminder. When we can hide behind a mask or a role, when no one is looking directly at us, evil finds the space to grow. Think about how many people out there, safe behind their screens, have said or done things they'd never dare to in person. It's easy to hide, to become someone else when no one's watching. But is that person someone you'd want to face in the mirror? And then there's dehumanization, the final nail in the coffin of empathy. How do you get someone to commit terrible acts against others? Easy. Make them believe those others aren't really human. It's a psychological trick that has fueled some of history's darkest moments. Zimbardo references a study by Albert Bandura at Stanford, where students overseeing another group were influenced by hearing them labeled with dehumanizing words like animals and savages. Not surprisingly, those labeled this way received much harsher punishments than those described as thoughtful and understanding. This same twisted logic was at play during events like the rape of Nanking, where Japanese soldiers viewed Chinese civilians as less than human and committed unspeakable acts. You might think that this kind of dehumanization is a relic of the past, or only exists in the minds of truly evil people. But take a closer look around. How often do you hear people being described as animals, scum, or vermin? How quickly do we dismiss their suffering once those labels stick? The moment you stop seeing someone as fully human is the moment you make room for your own dark potential. But wait, it gets worse. Words, as they say, can be weapons, and when used carefully, they can disguise even the worst actions. This is where euphemistic language comes in, using slick, sanitized words to turn torture into enhanced interrogation or genocide into ethnic cleansing. It's like sweeping blood under a fancy rug. Zimbardo digs into how this softened language and powerful ideologies can make horrible actions seem justifiable, even noble. Take the Milgram experiment again. The participants were told they were contributing to science, helping to improve memory. But in reality, they were causing real pain. The story they believed was that they were doing something important, something necessary. Fast forward to recent history, and you see the same strategy. The US invasion of Iraq and the torture at Abu Ghraib weren't described as atrocities. They were sold as necessary actions in the war on terror. Soldiers believed they were doing the right thing, even while committing acts that the world would later condemn. It's a grim reminder. When the words are twisted and the story sounds noble, evil can easily hide beneath the surface. So next time you hear someone using pretty words to make something ugly sound acceptable, ask yourself, what's really happening behind that polished speech? But don't lose hope just yet. If Zimbardo's journey into the dark side of human nature teaches us anything, it's that you still have a choice. You might be walking a tightrope over a dark pit, but that doesn't mean you have to fall in. Yes, the potential for evil is within you, but so is the potential for heroism. What does it take to resist the pull toward darkness, to stand firm when the world around you starts to slide? The answer is personal accountability. It's about owning your choices, even when the situation makes it easy to hide behind a role or a command. Remember the Milgram experiment? Some people refused to keep going even when pressured. They chose to walk away. They weren't superhuman. They just took responsibility for their actions when it would have been easier not to. It's a reminder that resisting isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose, moment by moment. But here's the hard part. You have to stay alert. You have to be willing to stand up, even when it's awkward, even when others stay silent. And that, my friends, is what separates the potential hero from the potential villain. So how do you resist the power of authority when it tries to push you in the wrong direction? The answer sounds simple, but it's anything but. Question authority. That's right. Question everything. Just because someone wears a badge, holds a title, or talks with confidence doesn't make them right. Zimbardo's research shows again and again that unchecked authority can lead good people to do bad things. It's easy to think those in power must have our best interests at heart. But history is full of examples where following orders led to disaster, from the obedience in the Milgram experiment to the blind following that led to the Jonestown tragedy. The lesson is clear. Authority, when left unchallenged, can be dangerous. But you're not powerless. You have a voice. You can say no, walk away, and push back. Sometimes that's all it takes to keep yourself from slipping into darkness. So, next time someone tells you to do something that doesn't sit right, pause, think, trust your instincts. It could be the difference between being a follower and being a hero. Let's talk about heroes, because even in all this talk about evil, there's another side to the story, those who act bravely while everyone else is paralyzed by fear. Zimbardo doesn't leave us with just the dark stuff. He shows us a way forward, a path to doing good, And it starts with action. What makes a hero? It's not super strength or endless confidence. It's the willingness to act while others hesitate. Think of Wesley Autry, the subway hero in New York. When a man had a seizure and fell onto the subway tracks, Autry didn't wait for someone else to step up. He jumped onto the tracks, pushed the man into a space between the rails, and shielded him as the train rolled overhead. While others stood frozen, he risked his life to save a stranger. That's what heroism is all about, not grand gestures, but simple, decisive actions. Zimbardo's message is clear. Heroism isn't just for the extraordinary. It's a choice that anyone can make, day by day. And this brings us to Zimbardo's hard-hitting truth. All of us, you and me, carry the seeds of both good and evil. We can be heroes or villains, depending on our choices and our circumstances. The choice between these two isn't something you make just once. It's a daily struggle, a constant battle. One moment, you might be the hero. The next, you might be tempted by the dark side. The key is awareness. Zimbardo challenges us to recognize this duality in ourselves, to understand that the potential for evil isn't just out there, but inside each of us too. It's not about despairing over this reality. It's about being mindful, staying aware, and steering ourselves toward the good. This self-awareness doesn't just make you a better person. It makes you a more conscious one, ready to make deliberate choices instead of being swayed by the situation. It's not about fearing what you might become. It's about choosing who you want to be every single day. As we near the end of this journey through the dark alleys of human nature, it's crucial to understand that the line between good and evil isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a real, everyday challenge. Zimbardo's work reminds us that this line can blur and shift, depending on the choices we make and the situations we find ourselves in. But here's the twist. Understanding this gives you an edge that many don't have. You're not just another person in the crowd, following orders, or drifting with the flow. You're aware of the forces that can push you down a dark path, and with that awareness comes responsibility. You have the power to resist, to act, to be the hero in your own story. And that's not just a nice idea. It's a necessity in a world where morality is constantly tested. So, where do you stand? Are you ready to choose the light when darkness creeps in? Are you prepared to act when others freeze? Because in the end, it's not just about avoiding evil. It's about actively choosing good. Let's wrap this up. The Lucifer Effect by Zimbardo isn't just a book about the dark side of human nature. It's a call to action. It's a challenge for each of us to confront the potential for darkness within and make a conscious choice to do good. The situations you face will test you, will push you toward that blurry line between right and wrong. But it's in those moments of testing that your true self comes through. Remember what we've uncovered. That blind obedience, loss of personal responsibility, dehumanization, and the power of twisted language can pull you toward a darker side. But also remember that within you is the power to resist, to question, and to act with courage, even when it's difficult. You don't need superpowers to be a hero. You just need the courage to choose the right thing, day after day. And that, my friends, is what will make all the difference. So here we are, at the end of this journey through the shadows of the human mind, led by Zimbardo's sharp insights. But let me leave you with this. The choice between good and evil isn't a one-time decision. It's a series of small, everyday choices. Every time you stand up for what's right, every time you resist the crowd, every time you see the humanity in others, you're pushing back against the forces that could turn you into something you're not. It's not easy. It's not always clear. But it's necessary. Because in the end, the story of your life isn't shaped by the situations you face. It's shaped by how you choose to respond to them. So choose wisely. Be the hero, not the villain. And when you find yourself at that moral crossroads, as we all will, Take a deep breath, look inside, and remember what we've learned today. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my dear friend.